G'day UMob, how's it going? Welcome to this episode of Aussie English, the number one place for anyone and everyone wanting to learn Australian English. I am your host Peter Smithson, and I hope you guys are having a cracker of a week. So, I'm going to do a little answering of your questions from Instagram today, but I guess firstly I wanted to say thanks for some of you guys giving me feedback on the previous episode that I released on our selection chapter 1. It seems like you guys are liking that. I'm working on also putting together like video lessons for it, as well as video breakdowns and everything that I'll probably include as a resource somewhere on the website later. I might do this after we finish the entire book. I think it's like almost 30 chapters, so we're going to be going for quite a while. But yeah, I'm working on that, and hope you guys enjoy it. So let me get to the questions that I was asked on Instagram recently. Let's have a look here. Okay. First up, we've got Christina Chow. Do you recommend any Aussie podcasts? Well, besides mine, obviously. I'm trying to think. There's a lot out there. I don't really listen to many Australian podcasts specifically. One of the ones I listen to with an Australian on it is one called Decoding the Gurus. Decoding the Gurus. This is a podcast with two. What is it? One of them is like they're both academics. One of them works in, I think, religion, and the other one works in like addiction and psychology. And they kind of break down the way that a lot of these famous guru type people speak and how they talk about certain topics and the mechanisms, the way that they speak about things that, what would you say? It sort of manipulates the listener into believing what they have to say, even if they're not being accurate with their comments. So it's the type of podcast where you're going to hear them break down people like Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, a lot of these big names that have their own podcasts or public platforms that they're talking on all the time. And for better or worse, sometimes they give them kind of like positive sort of reviews where they'll go through the way that they talk about certain topics or the things they're saying, all that sort of stuff. And other times they'll rip them to shreds and show like this person's using all of these rhetorical mechanisms to try and convince listeners or to try and win the argument, when they're not actually arguing good arguments. So I find that one really interesting just because it sort of allows me to understand more deeply how people can talk about certain topics without necessarily being, what would you say, convincing or accurate with their arguments, but they can win nonetheless because they use certain mechanisms or certain ways of speaking. So anyway, long story short, I listened to one called Decoding the Gurus. Other podcasts from Australia, man, there's lots of them. To be honest, I would just chat with ChatGPT or do a Google search or I guess ask other Aussie friends who are listening to podcasts and get what their recommendations are. ChatGPT is probably a good place. I use it for everything now. But what I would do is probably put into ChatGPT what your interests are, say I'm this old and I like these things and I live in Australia and I'm interested in blah, 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 blah. Do you have any Australian podcasts that you recommend that I listen to? And hopefully it gives you a good list of places to start. So that might be the best bet. Don't just do what I suggest, based on what I listen to, but think about what do you enjoy? What English is relevant to you? If you're working in medicine and you're in Australia, perhaps you want to try and find a podcast that is Australian and also about medicine or related to that field so that the English being used on the podcast is going to be directly applicable to you when you are working or speaking with other people and everything, okay? So I would suggest trying to find a podcast that overlaps with your interests or your career, your job, and diving in deep. And we've got another one here from Christina which says, would you mind doing an episode of reading a book in Aussie accent? Well, there you go. The Aussie accent reading a book, I'm doing that at the moment on our selection. Episode 1 is currently out. So go and listen to that. And obviously it's with my accent. So I'm reading that book out. I had a question from one of my students. Why did you pick a book that was so old? Partly, I was interested in that period of time, and I wanted to share that with you guys to give you a bit of a deeper understanding of Australian history and how Aussies saw themselves, 120 years ago in the 1800s. Part of me also wanted to be able to use a book that was free to be able to use, right? It's out of copyright. So if the book, I think it's 70 years or something like that, if the book has been out for 70 years, after that 70-year period, it's out of copyright. It may not be exactly 70 years. It may be some other amount of time, but that's the idea. And the public can use it. So you can use it for free without copyright. Whereas if I decided to read out Harry Potter on this podcast, I could get sued, So that's why I chose it. But yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying it. All right. What is the difficult part of the Australian English language? This one comes from Amir. I mean, I don't think Australian English is necessarily more or less difficult than any other dialect of English. It's going to have the same issues that speakers find troubling. I've done over the last 2 years, I've probably given about 2,000 or 3,000 lessons, private lessons with students. And again, shameless plug, if you guys want private lessons, send me an email, pete@aussieenglish.com.au, or send me a message on WhatsApp on Instagram. But the thing that I notice again and again and again and again, the trouble that students have, typically it's phrasal verbs and prepositions. So getting used to how we use words like to, for, up, down, in, out with verbs or to connect, certain collocations together. They have trouble with tenses, often the perfect tenses, as a good example, like have done, had done, will have done, getting used to those and using those properly. They have trouble with stress, so like reduction of syllables using the schwa, for example. So they may say a sentence like, I am going to go to the beach, where they're pronouncing all of the syllables sort of very clearly. And again, there's nothing wrong with doing that. You'll be understood. But a native speaker would say something like, I'm going to go to the beach, right? So you've got all of these reductions. I'm going to go to the beach, where lots of syllables are being reduced and given the schwa vowel sound, So like instead of to, you'll hear t. Instead of, what else is in there? Going to, you'll hear gonna or I'm gonna. I'm going to, I'm gonna, two schwas, mna, So getting used to that is quite difficult for a lot of learners. Then we also have intonation over the top of sentences. So getting used to when to have rising intonation or dropping intonation based on whether it's a statement or a question, or whether you're being sarcastic or curious or shocked. Getting used to that intonation is quite difficult for students. So yeah, I think those are kind of the main things that a lot of students find difficult. The TH, in terms of pronunciation, the TH is quite difficult. V and W, B and V, depending on what your native language is, and the vowel sounds, especially the diphthongs. And the most difficult out of all of them is probably the Australian O sound. Most, if not all, of my students find that one difficult. O, getting that O sound. So I'd probably say that. And then also connected speech, linking things together. So you'll say a sentence as if it's almost one big word that's linking everything together, as opposed to separate syllables that are all differentiated and spaced out. So if I was going to say a phrase like, did you want to hang out tomorrow? It sounds like I'm saying a single word, right? Did you want to hang out tomorrow? Like a really long word, instead of did you want to hang out tomorrow, right? So that's a big thing too, getting everything to link together nicely and learning the tricks of how to link certain sounds that are next to each other together. If you've got different vowel sounds that are linking or are next to one another, you will use sounds like r, y, or w to link those vowels. If you have consonants next to one another, sometimes you will mute certain consonants, like the T might be muted, the D might be muted, the P or the K, the G or the B. You may have them merge together. You may have them change. So like in the example of saying last year, if I said that together, I would actually turn the T and the Y sound at the interface between these two words, right? Last year, I would say it as ch, last year. That's called assimilation. So those are sort of the most advanced and difficult aspects of learning probably English in general, no matter what your dialect is, but definitely Australian English. So I hope that helps, mate. But the main thing is just doing a lot of work, constantly having a plan for working on your English every single day, having an active study plan. What are you actively doing? Not just sitting there and passively consuming English. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But if your goal is to try and improve and to try and sound more natural and to have, a bigger vocab, to have more fluency, to speak more confidently, you need to be doing something every day where you're trying to achieve these goals. So yeah, again, shameless plug. If you want lessons and you want a plan to sort of get on track and improve as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible, send me a message on Instagram or send me an email, pete@aussieenglish.com.au, and I'll be able to help you do that with private lessons. Anyway, let's keep going. How do you wake yourself up when you feel sleepy? It's a good question. So it comes from JM. So, oh man, I had a story the other day. What happened? I had 4 lessons in a row. I was doing private lessons on Zoom and I had 4 in a row in the morning. And I hadn't gotten enough sleep and I woke up and was just wrecked. So I had 2 coffees to try and wake me up, pretty standard way of doing it. But it was funny because, yeah, even though I'd had those 2 coffees and I was surviving, I still felt wrecked. I still felt tired. I still felt like, I wanted to go to sleep after the classes. But then after I finished my classes, I was wide awake and I was just like, God damn it. I finally finished and I have time to now rest and my body is now wide awake. So obviously I'm not very good at waking myself up when I feel sleepy. But yeah, I think moving around, getting your blood flowing, going for a walk, going for a quick run, I don't know, getting some movement in, that probably helps. Getting outside probably helps as well. But yeah, it's not easy, especially if you're a parent with young kids. You're just constantly tired. It never ends. All right, this one comes from Julia. So she's in Ukraine. Hey, Julia. How's it going? What's new? Oh, man, not much. Same shit, different day, we say, right? Same stuff, same old. Just working, lots of private classes, working on podcasts, trying to get better. Like I was sick a few weeks ago and haven't had a chance to record Goss episodes with my dad. So he's coming around today and we're hopefully going to do a whole bunch more Goss episodes for you guys on the podcast. So it's mainly just surviving. It's just, yeah, hanging out with the kids, working, hanging out with family, trying to survive, trying to pay the bills. Sure it's the same for all of you guys, right? I'm not unique in that area. All right, this one comes from Manahezeva or Zeve. Could you send me your podcast address if you have any? I want to listen to them. Oh, just search Aussie English Podcast. You'll find it on any podcast app, on Google. Just do a search. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Podcasts. You'll find it, obviously. Any of you guys listening to this episode, you'll have found it. So, yeah, hopefully you found it, mate. I'll try and send you a message on Instagram as well. What do we got here? Nagringa app. Where are you based? I am based in Geelong. So I am in Geelong. Next one. Anita. Hi from Indonesia. What is your opinion about recent mass protests in Sydney about immigration? Oh, my God. Yeah. So this has been an issue that's come up I think it was mainly in Sydney and Melbourne, right? We had a lot of protests. I think it's a complicated topic. It gets characterized wrongly, I think, in the media and on social media. I think a lot of people want to sort of straw man it and say it's just a bunch of racist people who hate migrants. And I don't think it's that. I think those people are probably there. There's probably a small group, if not definitely a small group of, say, Nazis who try and co-opt these events and take over them and use them for their own, disgusting goals. But I think they're a result of Australia's government currently, not reducing the amount of migration. We've had quite a lot, in the last few years. We've had something like 1 million migrants come into the country. And I think it's just the average Australian, whether you're a migrant or you were, born and raised here, is feeling under the pump. They're feeling like everything is really expensive. The rental crisis is off the charts, with like less than 1% vacancies. So people are finding it really difficult to find somewhere to live. Everything is insanely expensive. It's difficult to buy a house. The prices of houses just keep going up and up and up. The bills keep going up and up and up. The amount of people working in hospitals, policing, education. From my point of view, in my opinion, it seems like there aren't enough people working in those industries to kind of support the number of migrants coming into the country. So the government needs to have some kind of a plan to boost these areas and encourage workers to go in them so that we have enough people in hospitals, enough police, enough teachers to take care of all the people that are already here, compared to, if we just keep bringing in millions of migrants. So I think it's one of those things where there's probably something to it in terms of the amount of migration that we've had recently has put a lot of stress on the system, but I don't think it's the whole answer. And there are other factors at play. Australia, a big part of the problem that we have with housing is that there's all these incentives for people to use housing as an investment. So the government has negative gearing where you can set up your mortgage on a rental property that you've got to cost more than the amount of money you earn, and then claim that against your tax to save a lot of money. They've got the capital gains concession, right? Where if you sell a house, you don't have to pay as much tax on the amount of money that you've made, and you can just pocket that. So there's these incentives for people to put all of their money into housing instead of putting it into businesses and, other areas of the economy, which hopefully will change in the future because housing is unproductive, right? The more money you pour in there, it doesn't actually build anything. It doesn't develop anything. It doesn't push the economy forward. It's just kind of dead weight, if that makes sense. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, back to the immigration protests. I think there's sort of like legitimate reasons why people are frustrated about the way in which migration is taking place. I don't think it is that the average Australian hates migrants or doesn't want migrants here. I think that the media kind of jumped on that, and it's like, if you talk to the average Australian, they're not like, we don't want Asian people here, we don't want black people here, we don't want Europeans here, we don't want anyone who's not, a native Australian speaker of the language or has grown up here. It's not that. They love, and a lot of them are migrants. It's that they're worried about the amount of people coming in while the system is under stress. So that's my 2 cents. Let's keep going. We've got Shu Pitt here saying, I love Australia. Not a question, but good, glad to hear it. Daniel Odella, are you single? Man, do you listen to this podcast? I'm married with 2 kids, buddy. And then we have username of me is my name, okay? G'day, mate. What is the difference between don't need and needn't? So if you don't need something or you needn't, I guess you would say needn't have something. Needn't here is kind of used as an auxiliary verb, like needn't do something is like you don't have to do it. So it's very sort of old-fashioned. It's kind of very formal. If you said you needn't worry, it's kind of like you don't need to worry. It's just a different way of saying that. It's just, it's a more formal way of doing it. And it's something that if like I heard someone doing it, I would think they were probably very old. That my grandparents might speak that way. You needn't worry. The average Australian probably wouldn't use that auxiliary verb structure at all. They would just say don't need. All right, let's keep going. Nutella. Is the TV film or TV show here, McLeod's Daughters, similar to real life in Australia? McLeod's Daughters is a TV show about, I think, like people living on farms, right? It came out like over a decade ago, probably 20 years ago. And it was sort of farm, rural, regional kind of life. I think it probably is, depicts life out there relatively accurately in terms of, their day-to-day. But obviously it's a drama, so they build in a lot of things that happen that I think, your average daily life is going to be pretty boring. No matter where you are in Australia, you're not going to have all this action constantly happening. A good example of that is when I grew up, there was a TV show called Blue Heelers. And it was about police in a small town in, I think, regional Victoria. And every episode was obviously crime that was taking place. And I think there were memes going around or, things online at the time talking about how this tiny little town was probably the most dangerous place in Australia because of all the crime that took place. That there were like 30 murders there over the entire series. Whereas, the average small town in Victoria is probably never going to experience a murder. So, yeah, it was just a funny thing to notice, all this drama in one little place. All right, we're getting to the end here. I want to learn Aussie slangs that tradies use. Kai. So, I would watch TV shows, listen to podcasts, consume content where tradies are speaking, where you get to hear that language, hang out with tradies, talk to tradies, spend time with them. That would be the way to learn the kind of slang that they're using. Even I would have to do that because I don't spend, a lot of time with tradies. So I don't necessarily know the exact type of slang, swear words, expressions, the things that they would use on a daily basis with each other. So I would dive in and try and find some resources where you're going to hear tradies speaking just normally every day. Probably podcasts would be the best place to start and, look for conversations and just keep track of those types of things you hear popping up. Ask ChatGPT. Again, this is one of those things. Get on ChatGPT and say, I want to learn Aussie slang from tradies in Australia. What do you recommend in terms of resources? And see if it can just scan the internet for any really good resources. Probably watching TV shows like Fat Pizza might be a good one. There's probably tradies in there and there's lots of slang. That's sort of Western Sydney. There's a lot of kind of like ethnic language in there, like quote unquote WOG language, where they've got like Italian, Greek, Lebanese. They've got a whole bunch of these migrant communities in that area that are in the TV show, and they all have their own unique kind of accent slang that they use. So that might be a really cool place to start. But yeah, that or just YouTube could be another one. Looking up YouTube videos, looking for tradies on there, even, teaching, showing what they do at work, all that sort of stuff. I'm sure there's channels on there with tradies talking and just going about their life, and you can listen to that and try and pick up the language that they're using. All right, the last one comes from the Peacemaker Wanderer. Do you have any advice for how to survive in an era when the cost of living is so expensive? Yeah, man, I feel you. It's like there's two ways of surviving, right? Or doing better money-wise. Either you cut your costs and stop spending as much and try and save more, or you try and improve the amount of income you're earning, right? Increase it. So try and work longer hours at your job, try and get a side hustle of some kind, a job on the side that you can do and try and earn a bit more money. There's really only two ways about it. It's like business. You try and reduce your expenses or increase your profits. So yeah, there's that. Being thrifty, try and think about the things you do need to buy, like food or clothes or, those sorts of things, and think, how can I save as much money as possible buying these things? Can I buy them in bulk? Can I buy them used? If I get clothes, can I get them from a secondhand store somewhere? Can I go to a cheaper store? I always shop at Kmart. I'm shameless. The Kmart has a whole bunch of t-shirts, hoodies, pants, and underwear and socks and all that sort of stuff that I like, and I just get the same stuff, and I have 20 of each thing, and that is why when you see me in videos, I'm pretty much always wearing the same thing. Partly I can't be bothered thinking about having different outfits and worrying about that, so every day I pretty much wear the same thing, though I have different colors. And the other part of me is like, I just don't care that much about clothing that I'm going to spend shitloads of money on my wardrobe. Instead, I spend it on guitars or my family, So you got to pick and choose what you want to do. So yeah, that would be my advice, mate. Like as an example for me, trying to make money on the side, I have indoor plants. I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast, but I've got a lot of these rare indoor plants that I grow in one of the rooms in my house, and I buy and sell them, So again, sort of, it's not going to make me a millionaire, but it's earning probably, a few $100s a month. And then there's things like some guitar gear. Like I'm into guitar. I play a lot of guitar at the moment, and I keep an eye on Marketplace on Facebook, and I've gotten to know what products sort of are popular that people want to buy. And when I see them come up for sale somewhere in Australia for very cheap, I'll buy them and then I'll try and sell them at a profit and make a few $100s. A good example of this is, I don't know if you guys will know Gibson Les Pauls, right? They're a type of guitar. I bought two of those recently for, I think one of them was $2,500 and the other one was $2,700. Again, I'd saved up and I'd sold some other gear, so I had this money. But both of those guitars are worth probably about $3,500. So my goal was, when I saw these guitars come up really, really cheap, I was like, I'll jump on that and buy them, and then I'll, play them for a bit, and then hopefully sell them in the future and make a few $100 on each one. So, that's another thing you could do if you have a certain hobby, if you have a certain interest where there's things that are bought and sold. Check out like Marketplace, eBay, Gumtree, and see if you can keep an eye out for things that are getting sold really cheap that are popular, that other people will pay more money for, even in this economy. So, yeah. Hopefully that helps. Anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me, guys. I look forward to doing this in another week or two. And yeah, I hope you guys have an amazing week. Stay strong, stay cool, and I'll see you next time. Tooroo!